What if one act of kindness, just one, could echo across the stars and save an entire civilization decades later? This is the story of a lone miner left to die in the cold vacuum of space, and the mysterious beings who saved him without expecting anything in return. But when those same beings face extinction, only one question remains. Will humanity remember? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and show a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's jump into the story. Terran Wells had always believed he would die with his boots on, deep inside some rocky asteroid belt, carving out a living where no one else dared to go. But not like this. Not alone, not drifting through the silent dark with only broken metal and his own breath for company. He floated among the ruins of Rook Station, what had once been a thriving mining hub in the Luminine Belt, now reduced to a slow-motion explosion of twisted girders and flickering lights. Pieces of machinery spun around him like forgotten satellites. His oxygen gauge blinked yellow. 5 hours and 43 minutes of life left. He tried not to think about it. Tried not to look at the cracked helmet of a fellow miner drifting by, eyes frozen open in the black. Terran's hands trembled as he checked his suit's emergency beacon, still blinking, still screaming into the void. But out here, 47 million kilometers from the nearest station, screaming didn't mean much. It had all gone wrong so fast. 1 minute, they were harvesting volatile crystal compounds from the asteroid's core, just another long shift. In deep space. The next, a tremor rocked the station, followed by another. The vibrations weren't natural. A cascade of energy surged through the crystals, amplifying into something unstable, something deadly. Terran barely had time to grab his helmet before the station erupted from the inside out. He'd been on an outer deck running diagnostics when the first explosion hit. That, ironically, saved his life. Most of the crew were inside trapped when the halls caved in. He saw a few escape pods launch, just pinpricks of hope vanishing into the dark. He hadn't made it. By the time he reached the docking bay, it was gone, torn from the station, drifting away like a toy lost in a storm. So now, he was just here. A single heartbeat lost in the cold breath of space. His family wouldn't even know. His mom back on Europa would wait for a message that wouldn't come. She'd lost her husband to a mining accident. Now her son too? The thought made his chest ache worse than the air pressure warning flashing in his HUD. Terran tried to keep busy. He activated the suit recorder and began speaking. If someone ever found the logs, maybe they'd understand what happened. He described the energy pulses, the strange readings on the sensors, anything that might help prevent this in the future. His voice was rough, cracking between words. But at least it filled the silence. Then, something strange happened. The stars moved. Not just the slow tumble of his own spin. No, this was different. They shifted, dimmed, warped like light, bending through water. His eyes widened. At first, he thought his visor was malfunctioning. But no, the suit sensors lit up, overwhelmed with data. Unclassified energy signatures. Electromagnetic surges. Gravity spikes. Nothing matched human technology. It wasn't a rescue ship. It wasn't anything he'd ever seen. And then it appeared. From the blackness unfolded a ship, unlike any built by human hands. It didn't fly, it glided, as if the universe moved aside to let it pass. Its surface shimmered with soft lights that pulsed in waves, like the gentle rhythm of a heartbeat. Terran couldn't tell where it began or ended. It was beautiful and terrifying, a creature of light and curve rather than metal and edge. His HUD screamed with alerts. Unknown vessel approaching. Suit integrity compromised by external interference. But Terran couldn't move, couldn't speak. He just stared, helpless and small. A beam of soft blue light enveloped him. He tried to scream, but no sound came. His suit no longer felt heavy. The cold was gone. The stars disappeared. Terran blinked and found himself standing, not floating in a room that defied logic. The floor pulsed softly under his boots. The walls shimmered, alive with color and motion, like the surface of a dream. The air was warm, filled with a scent he couldn't place fresh, calming. A group of tall beings approached, their forms graceful and strange. They weren't human, not even close. Their limbs were long, their skin semi-transparent, their eyes deep pools of silent intelligence. One of them stepped forward. It didn't speak with a mouth. Its words landed directly in Terran's mind, like thoughts he hadn't known he was thinking. "You are safe, Terran Wells," the voice said gently. "We heard your silence." His knees buckled. Relief, confusion, terror, it all hit him at once. He couldn't breathe. The being made a small motion, and the room filled with a soft tone that wrapped around his panic like a blanket. Terran inhaled. It wasn't fear anymore. It was awe. The being stepped closer. "We are the Velari. You are not meant to die in the void." Terran opened his mouth, trying to find words. None came, only tears. He had been ready to die. Now, for reasons he didn't understand, he was alive, and not alone. Terran Wells had never expected to live past that day in space, let alone wake up somewhere that felt like it belonged in someone else's dream. The Velari ship, the Severon, was nothing like any human vessel. It didn't hum with the buzz of machines or blink with control panels. It breathed. The walls shimmered like moonlight on water. The floor pulsed underfoot with a soft rhythm, like a slow, steady heartbeat. Everything moved subtly, as if the Yamgum-V ship itself was alive and aware of him. He had been brought to what the Velari called a healing chamber. It was warm, peaceful, and strangely comforting, though the air had no smell and the light had no source. A being named Lure stood nearby, tall and serene, watching over him with kind, unblinking eyes that seemed to see every thought Terran hadn't yet spoken. Lure never used a mouth to communicate. The words came directly into his mind, perfectly clear, never rushed. At first, it had unsettled him. Now, he found it easier than speaking. "You are recovering well," Lure told him. "Your body was damaged, but we repaired it." Terran sat up slowly, the memory of drifting alone still fresh in his bones. "Why?" he asked out loud, his voice rough. "Why save me?" Lure's glow pulsed faintly, like a quiet sigh. "Because we could. No life should be lost to silence if help is possible." Terran had no answer. In his world, people didn't just do things without asking for something back. But these beings had found him, far from anywhere, and saved him without knowing his name. He tried to imagine humans doing the same for an alien floating alone in space. He wasn't sure they would. Over the next few days, or however time passed, inside the Severon, Terran learned more than he ever had in years of working the mines. The Velari were ancient, older than any human civilization by a scale too vast to measure. They had stopped building weapons long ago. War, to them, was a failure of understanding. Their ships were designed for healing, learning, and exploration. They didn't seek territory or power. They wandered the stars, quietly observing, recording, helping where they could. Chancellor Inari, the leader of the vessel, met Terran in a chamber that seemed made entirely of starlight and glass. Inari's presence filled the space with a calm authority that required no force to be respected. When she spoke into his thoughts, her voice carried the weight of centuries, yet also a strange gentleness. "We have watched your people for some time," she told him. "You are young and often violent, but you learn quickly. You adapt. You care, even when it costs you." Terran shifted uncomfortably. "That's not always true." Most of us would have ignored a signal like mine. Inari's light shimmered a shade deeper. Perhaps, but some would not. We chose to believe in the part of humanity that might answer the call. Terran couldn't stop thinking about it. These beings owed him nothing. They had risked changing course, exposing themselves to unknown danger, just to pull a single man from the jaws of death. It wasn't a rescue, at least not the kind Earth would have planned. It was kindness, pure and simple. He asked Inari once, during a quiet moment, if they expected anything in return. No, she said, but remember us. That is all we ask. Memory carries power. Perhaps one day, that memory will mean something. More. The words stuck with him. He began recording every detail he could: how the Velari moved, what their symbols meant, how their ship communicated like a living being. He learned their philosophy, how they believed that every conscious mind in the galaxy added to a collective understanding, like lights in a dark sea. The more he listened, the more he understood. And still, despite all their knowledge and peace, there was something else he noticed. A quiet sadness beneath the calm. As if the Velari carried old griefs, they didn't speak aloud. He once asked Lure if the Velari had ever known war. Lure hesitated before answering. Long ago. We survived. But not unchanged. That is why we choose to protect life, even in small ways. It humbled Terran in ways he couldn't explain. Back home, people worked to get ahead, to survive, to profit. The Velari traveled light years to save strangers they would never see. Again, they weren't rescuers because it was policy. They did it because it was right. When the time came for him to leave, Terran felt a strange heaviness in his chest. The Aseveron had carried him farther than any human ship ever had, both in distance and understanding. He stood at the airlock, helmet in hand, staring at the beings who had shown him more kindness than some of his own species. Lure placed one hand on his shoulder, and the touch felt like a warm breeze on skin. You will return to your people? Terran Wells. Tell them not just of us, but of what is possible. Terran nodded slowly. I will. As the airlock sealed behind him and his shuttle detached, drifting toward a distant Earth outpost, he looked back one last time. The Velari ship faded, not into distance, but into some folded space he couldn't understand, like a dream slipping from the edge of memory. But he would remember. He had to. 40 years passed since Terran Wells had returned from the stars. But the memory of that quiet ship, those gentle beings, and the miracle of his rescue never left him. Now, at 71, Terran walked with a cane and spoke in a slower voice, but his mind remained sharp. He had become a historian, a speaker, and eventually a respected advisor to Earth's United Federation. He didn't seek fame, but his name had quietly become a symbol of what could happen when compassion crossed the stars. He was in a quiet meeting room in the Federation Assembly Tower when the call came. A technician rushed in, pale, eyes wide. Sir, it's for you. Priority Alpha. It came through deep space emergency channels. Terran stood carefully, his joints creaking. He took the datapad from the shaking young man and opened the file. At first, only static. Then a voice. Clear, familiar. Velari. This is Chancellor Inari of the Velari Collective. The message began, broken and weak from interference. 2. The humans of Earth. We are in danger. The Drexari Dominion has declared war on our people. Not for territory, for extinction. We have no military. Our worlds fall one by one. Our last hope is your memory. If you remember Terran Wells. If you remember our mercy. We ask, humbly, for help. The message ended in silence. Across the hall, the Federation Council sat in session, unaware that history had just knocked on their door. Terran entered the chamber and asked for the floor. Though older and slower, when he spoke, the room stilled. Many of you know me as a survivor, he began. But I was more than rescued. I was witnessed. Witnessed by a species that chose empathy over caution. Now they're asking if we remember. Some nodded quietly. Others looked away. The Federation president, Sarah Noel, spoke up. Mr. Wells, what exactly are they asking of us? Terran raised his eyes to meet hers. Everything. They are asking for help in a war they can't fight. They are asking us to stand in front of a storm that wasn't meant for us. General Halden Miles, commander of Earth's Defense Command, leaned forward, brow tight. The Drexari Dominion isn't just some pirate fleet. They control dozens of systems. Their technology is advanced, and they have no interest in diplomacy. This would be a war on a scale we've never faced. Terran nodded. True, but so was their kindness. It cost them nothing to save me, and they didn't ask questions. Now they're burning, and we hold the water. Debates began. Fear ran through the room like wind through tall grass. Some warned of the risk to human lives, the political backlash, the resources it would drain. Others asked what kind of species they would become if they stood by and watched friends perish. The room swayed back and forth, as fragile as a boat. In a storm, finally, President Noel stood. Her voice was calm, but her words cut through the tension. History watches moments like this. Not for how easy they were, but for what they demanded. If we turn away now, we turn away from the best part of ourselves. The vote was called. After hours of back and forth, the result was close. But clear. Earth would answer the call. Within days, the defense fleet began preparing. Military yards shifted from trade patrol construction to war production. Emergency recruitment notices went out to all colonies. Generals dusted off strategies that had never made it beyond theory. Humanity had fought before, but never for someone else. Taron was invited to advise the mission, though many urged him not to go. I'm old, he said to General Miles with a tired smile. But I remember what they did. I can help you understand who they are. Miles nodded. Then you're not just a witness anymore. You're part of the reason we're going. The Velari had no armies, no defenses. Their ships were medical vessels, research cruisers, learning halls, sailing through space. The Drexari saw them as weak, unworthy of survival. One by one, their peaceful worlds had fallen, their cities burned, their data archives turned to dust. Human fleet left orbit carrying weapons. The galaxy had never seen hybrid tech built from human persistence and alien design. They didn't go to conquer. They went to stand between the fire and the ones who could not fight. As Earth ships neared Velari space, the signs of destruction became clear. Whole planets glowed with ruin. Communication signals were weak or silent. The last remaining Velari convoy hid near a dying star, their energy nearly gone. Their numbers few. Taron sat in the command room of the UFS Vanguard, staring at the hollow remains of once thriving worlds. He clenched his fists quietly. The Velari had asked if he remembered. He did. And soon, the stars would too. Asterisk, the human fleet arrived on the edge of the Velari star system, like a spark in the dark. A collection of ships, bristling with quiet resolve. On the command deck of the UFS Vanguard, General Halden Miles stood tall, eyes locked on the holographic display, showing the layout of the battlefield. To his right, Terran Wells sat in a reinforced chair, wrapped in a thick coat despite the ships. Steady climate control. His hands trembled slightly, more from emotion than age. He had lived long enough to see the moment when a promise would finally be kept. The Velari refugee fleet was barely holding on. Their remaining ships, mostly healing vessels and research cruisers, were hidden in the shadow of the collapsing moon, trying to evade detection. The Drexari warships moved slowly through the system like hungry wolves, confident and cruel. The Dominion believed this was a cleanup mission, the final sweep in a war they had already won. What they didn't know was that humanity had come not as saviors, but as friends who hadn't forgotten. The battle began without warning. Human ships broke formation, diving into unpredictable attack paths that made Drexari targeting systems struggle to keep up. Instead of energy beams, Earth's vessels launched sleek kinetic projectiles, solid metal moving at terrifying speed. The Drexari shields, designed to absorb plasma and laser fire, were useless against the pure force of mass and velocity. Their first line of ships shattered like glass. In the chaos, human pilots moved like they had trained for this their entire lives. Civilian cargo ships had been repurposed into mobile missile platforms. Mining vessels released waves of stealth drones that attacked from blind angles. And still, through the noise and fire, the mission remained clear. Buy the Velari time to escape, protect them at all costs. Terran listened as battle reports came in. Names of ships, lives lost. Moments of bravery and pain. His heart ached with every sacrifice. He wanted to speak, to say something to the crew, but he didn't have to. They already knew why they were there. He had told the story. Now they were writing its final chapter. Among the Velari, the call had gone out. Escape vessels began launching from behind the dead moon, their engines barely running. Human fighters swarmed around them, intercepting enemy missiles and guiding them through narrow gaps in the battlefield. It was a dance of death and determination. For every Velari saved, a human ship took a hit. For every one that escaped, another risked never returning. Then came the turn. The Drexari command ship, the Black Metal, appeared on the field. Monstrous vessel capable of destroying cities in minutes. Its arrival was meant to end the fight. Instead, it became the symbol of something else. The vanguard locked in course and prepared to intercept. Terran, who had seen that kind of shadow once before, the kind that had nearly taken his life, stood slowly and moved to the window. "Are we really doing this?" he whispered. General Niles didn't take his eyes off the target. "Yes, sir. For them. For you. For all of us." A final volley launched. 3 massive kinetic charges, each the size of a shuttle, ignited with silent fury. They pierced the Black Mantle's hull and tore it open like paper. The explosion shook the battlefield. And then, silence. The Drexari forces hesitated. Their leader was gone. Their confidence cracked. Human forces didn't stop, not out of revenge, but out of duty. They cleared the path for every last Velari ship. By the end of the original Earth fleet, less than half returned. Terran Wells did not survive the journey back. His heart gave out hours after the last Velari vessel slipped into folded space. He died quietly in his sleep, surrounded by officers who had grown to see him not just as a figure from history, but as a symbol of what they were fighting for. At his funeral, held on a small moon orbiting the new Velari colony, beings from over a dozen species came to pay respects. His coffin was draped in the flag of Earth, but beside it stood the soft glowing banner of the Velari, a symbol of light. In darkness, Chancellor Inari, her skin dim with sorrow, placed a small crystal beside his resting place. It contained the story of his rescue, told in the Velari way. A tale of a life spared, and the ripple it created across the galaxy. In the years that followed, Earth became something more than just a young species with stubborn hearts and clever machines. It became a protector, a keeper of promises, a name whispered not with fear, but with hope. The Wells Accord was signed. Agreement between dozens of civilizations to defend the weak, respond to distress, and never forget the power of one act of kindness. A deep space beacon was placed where Rook Station once drifted. Any ship passing through would hear the simple story of a man who floated alone in silence and the people who came for him. It ended with 7 words. Kindness echoes. It always finds its way.